What's going on, guys? My name is Doug. Welcome back to the channel. A lot of you guys have asked for this video. You want it, you got it. We're going to be listening to Atrocity Exhibition by Danny Brown. For those of you that are asking yourselves, this came out 3 years ago. Why is this guy only reviewing it now? Is he trying to hop onto hype of you know what I'm saying? And is he trying to gain views because of Danny Brown's fan base and the fact that he just released an album? No, actually, for those of you that don't know, I have only really been listening to hip-hop for about 6 years now. I'm 22 years old. I fell in love with hip-hop at 16. Before that, I used to mostly listen to rock music. And I've got a lot of homework to catch up on. I was not familiar with Danny Brown and his music. I had heard a couple one-off tracks and thought that his style was just not for me. I listened to You Know What I'm Saying. That was the first full-length project from Danny Brown that I have actually heard. And so I have never listened to Atrocity Exhibition. Now, as we all know, we love music partially because it doesn't have an expiration date. Some albums get better with time, but the thing is, if it's the first time you're listening to it, it's the first time you're listening to it, whether the album's been up for 30 years or not. So I'm expecting this to be an absolute exhibition of atrocities, as the title suggests. I'm expecting this to be like walking through a museum of weirdness, of just obscenity and profanity and absolutely zany, weird things. You know, a lot of you guys have told me this is a trip. Prepare yourself. It's very experimental. So I'm expecting just an absolutely absurd level of just experimental music, weird sounds, wacky vocal arrangements, and just strangeness from this project. I'm going into this with a very open mind, open ears, ready to accept whatever it is that Danny Brown throws at me so that I can give you guys the quality analysis that you guys want from me. I can't guarantee that this is going to be music that I enjoy to listen to. You know, I can't guarantee that this is a project that I will want to come back to, because experimental music is something that I can appreciate for the art, but I don't necessarily find it all that replayable. I can't necessarily promise that I'm going to think that this album is absolutely mind-blowing, but I can promise that I will not judge it. I'll give it a fair shot before I actually give any analysis. I'm not going to judge it by its cover. I'm not going to judge it based off of the first few tracks and just consider the rest trash. I'm going to give this a fair listen and then think it through. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm stumbling over my words. I'm sweating. It's very hot here in Rio de Janeiro. We're heading into the summer where it reaches like 110 to 115 degrees daily almost. It's pretty absurd. So let's get into it. For everybody that asked for this video and you're finally getting it, I'm expecting you to hit the Patreon button and become patrons, because I need y'all to support the channel, because YouTube's copyright system is ridiculous. It's been on one lately. The clips of the music will most likely be kept very short. Like every single individual clip will most likely be under 5 to 6 seconds, because the copyright system just doesn't understand what fair use is, what analysis and critique is. So yeah, support the channel and help me to keep these videos coming. I'm doing this all for you guys. And that's a lie. I do it partially for myself as well. I enjoy doing this. The intro has been going on for long enough. I've been talking too much. Shout out to Miami. And let's listen to some music. The first track is Downward Spiral. Okay. The percussion is very interesting. So okay, so yeah, I was right to come into this expecting this to be very weird. I'm trying to process what I heard. Okay, so during the verses, the production is very rhythmic. It's not very melodic in nature. There's not a lot of harmony or notes, really, in particular, during the verses. It's all very percussive. It's all very rhythmic. You know, there's a lot of very interesting mixing on some of the drums. They're very reverberant. And the only time that we actually get a feel, like a sense of melody, is during the hook, when we get this very distorted guitar that comes in that plays these dissonant chords, you know, it fits with how weird the track is. So that's what I'm thinking on the production. It's all mixed very loud, you know, it's all very, very loud. Sometimes it muffles out his vocals, so I'm glad that I have Genius pulled up so that I can understand the lyrics. The lyrics are just as weird as the production. You know, he goes from talking about drinking Hennessy straight and having his chest feeling like a furnace from the alcohol to having a threesome, having to pay for the threesome, and then not being able to get hard and having to put it in soft. He talks about being paranoid and not answering his phone. He talks about not answering his door when people answer. So there's this sense of paranoia, there's this sense of anxiety, of uncertainty, you know, and not knowing or not trusting the people that are around you. You know, there is that element also. And definitely the production is very anxiety inducing, so that fits. But for the most part, I mean, that's really all I was able to catch. It's relatively short. That's really all I was able to catch off my first listen. Next track is Tell Me What I Don't Know.
Doubles off me, cause we was living in hell, couldn't afford property. Little nigga getting funded from OG. Crash, teacher from my sack, going nowhere fast. Thinking we was grown men, really little niggas. Chopping dope fiends, that's owing us with credit. Taking turns, catching shit. Tell me what I don't know. Look great,
I love how tribal this sounds.
Shit is like a cycle. You get out, I go in, this is not the life club.
So, I like how this one feels, you know, it's not as weird as the last one, the production. This one feels more structured, this one feels more traditional a little bit. You know, we do get some synths that sound really cool, really eerie. I like how tribal the percussion is when it comes in towards the end of the track. That tribal percussion paired with the whistle actually reminds me a little bit of the samba that we hear here in Brazil. You know, they use a lot of instruments like that, you know, cowbells and whistles, and I don't know how you call the instrument, but the cuica, which is what we call it, it's a lot of very interesting sounding percussion instruments, you know, so that's kind of the feeling that I got from it. That's kind of the memories that I got from it. I think that it's extremely creative, obviously, production-wise. Lyrically, it seems like he's talking about selling drugs, selling weed, his homie that got killed at the liquor store, and just, you know, that street lifestyle that he talked about a lot also on You Know What I'm Saying. Definitely feeling like You Know What I'm Saying is way more mainstream than this, and even that I was already like, okay, this is very different. But this is just on another level. You know, this is extremely experimental. I like it. I like, you know, listening to it. It's very different. It's very interesting. You know, it's not necessarily the most replayable music, like I said at the beginning of the video, but it is very fun to sit down and listen to and experience. You know, it's definitely an experience. Next track is Rolling Stone.
Just release me. Like that, no, I'm just made rich. Even if she trying rough, but ain't that rough. Way heavier, I promise you. Let the cricket tell that so. Smoking like it's been a fight. Chest me in a backseat with the driver bumping on my slaves. Lost my brain, got way the same. Self-medicate is how I cope. Leave my body so overflow.
I love that bass line, man. It's so groovy. Again, this one's more traditionally structured. You know, his voice is very animated. It's very high-pitched. It's almost nasally, you know, it's almost shrill and harsh. I don't know how it sounds with headphones on. I'm listening on a speaker right now, but, you know, that's something that could potentially, with headphones on, sound really harsh. I think that the subject matter is pretty crazy. He talks about self-medication. He talks about living like a rock star. You know, he talks about disappointing the people that he loves. Talked about a woman, right, that he's disappointed that she can't bear to be with him anymore. Yeah, he says that he doesn't know who he should trust and things like that. So it's that rock star lifestyle subject matter. I'm loving the hook. You know, I think that Petite Noir on the hook is a great addition to this track. I think that he sounds really nice on there. I like that he leaves a whole lot of space in the instrumentals before he says just release me, because it's funny because that instrumental portion before the last line of the hook creates tension, and then when he says just release me and it goes into the verse, it releases that tension. I think it's a really nice way to demonstrate musically what he's talking about lyrically. I think it's really great. Next track is Really Dope. Kendrick Lamar, Ab-Soul, and Earl Sweatshirt, and I've never heard this? What? Oh, I forgot to mention about that last track. I really digged, you know, the ethereal, eerie bells and synths that were going on. I was going to mention these bells here. They sound very dark, and I realized that I hadn't mentioned the production on that last track as well. Yeah, these bells, they sound so sinister. You know, I think it's really cool to create that dark atmosphere, that ambience.
Every day your best is shine. You stay up that night like your head so like time like your run. You haters can go to hell when you're getting money, nigga. Every day is sunny, I'm an actor ass. Getting high as fuck, boy, you're trying to write me up. But now I'm a writer with ambition.
Gave it all to public housing, taking off the Abu Dhabi, beaming up the motor Scotty, talking big power, big stages. My zoo cannot fit the cages. This booth is not used to faking.
Gonna be locking it up. And I'm the type of nigga it ain't never been an honor to judge. Broke up with my bitch cause we ain't argue enough. I keep it dirty as a split my Uncle Alchemist puff.
Okay, first of all, Kendrick Lamar had the tightest flow on this. He also did a great job on the hook. Earl Sweatshirt had my second favorite verse. Probably one of the hardest verses from Earl that I've heard personally. The Absol and Danny Brown verses were dope. But man, those two young guys, these young kids are outshining them, man. It's crazy. It was just a different level. You know, it just sounded so much better on the beat than the previous two verses. It was pretty crazy to listen to. I think it's a really great mashup of talent. You know, I think that the second half of this track was just absolutely ridiculous. That beat and those two verses are the highlight so far of this project for me. I love that. That was insane. Next track is Lost.
Ain't no way a nigga won't make a grip in a week. I'ma chill with this freak, never gram and a half. The bags by the nigga ain't trippin'. Lost in the sauce, but a nigga still dead cut. I'm like Spielberg with ill words and hoes on a curb. Gotta screw loose, I'm cold mentality to start. Made a billion and they get and that style ain't trick. But I put my niggas out, make a million for.
Yo, the sample was pretty creepy. It was pretty scary and eerie and kind of spooky. I like it. I like the way that dark, again, atmosphere, that dark atmosphere is created with the track. Very conventional, you know, boom bap beat. And he was going off. I think I prefer the second verse. You know, I like the way that he started that flow. The Spielberg with ill words and hoes on the curb, got a screw loose and cuckoo, mentally disturbed. I thought that was pretty dope. I like the references to the directors, you know, Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg. I like how hungry he sounds here, you know. There's a hunger for more success and for more recognition, really, you know, recognition for his hard work. I like how hungry he sounds here. It's dope. Next track is Ain't It Funny. The horns are insane. So here he talks about how how the joke is on him and Satan's the one laughing at him because he is stuck in this rut of alcohol and drug abuse and he can't seem to get himself out of it because he's addicted at this point. You know, he can't help but continue to snort the coke, continue to abuse the alcohol, and specifically here he says Hennessy. And it's just this picture of these people who are stuck in this lifestyle of constantly partying and constantly getting high and drunk and just going through life and not even really experiencing it because they're so out of it, you know, and the fact that it really is a vicious cycle that they get stuck in. That's what I feel like he's talking about here. And he does it over a very hectic beat with very loud brass horns. You know, it's what am I trying to say? The beat sounds so chaotic, the horns sound so loud, the mixing is very insane, it's very zany, the drums are really muffled almost. His voice is reverberant and loud and shrill, and all of it is just screaming chaos and just chaotic energy, and like everything is a mess. You know, that's kind of what that track conveys. Just everything very chaotic. Next track is Gold Dust. So I'm starting to catch the picture that he's painting with the entire project. starting with Downward Spiral and just showing us this person who lives like a Rolling Stone, who lives this rock star lifestyle, just losing it more and more and more with every single track, just getting more and more lost in this cycle of addiction to drugs and alcohol, to abuse, and having basically been destined for this all along because it ran through his entire family. All of them are addicts, and he ended up in the same situation. It's really a sad picture that he is painting lyrically here. And the instrumentals are all reflecting just the chaos and the turbulence of that lifestyle. It's starting to make so much sense now, and artistically, this is really starting to click. Musically, honestly, it's not enjoyable to me. I don't enjoy this type of music. I enjoy dissecting it and analyzing the art and appreciating it, but I don't really enjoy, coming to this and listening to this while I'm trying to relax or while I'm trying to, something like that. This is an album that you come to for a specific experience. This isn't. I almost don't even consider this music. This is something else. This is like when you put on a movie. You put this on and you're ready to just experience this. You put a movie on and you're ready to experience it for 2 hours. You put this on, you're ready to experience it for about 50 minutes, and it's like a journey. It's not even listening to music. It's different. It's something else. It's a really special project so far. I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to see the appeal here. It's crazy that it took me, 7 tracks, but I'm getting it. You guys proud of me? Next track is White Lines. So coming off of Gold Dust, I can't imagine what White Lines is about. Instrumentals on Gold Dust, very rock and roll oriented, loving the distorted guitars. Everything about that just screams loud energy. The dynamics to this project are also very extreme. So this one, he's again abusing the cocaine, and it looks like Molly as well, and he seems to be experiencing almost like an overdose. He's wondering whether or not this is actually an overdose that's going on, and whether or not it's his time to go. He says his heart's beating faster, and he's talking about some of these experiences that he's had while he was high. And it's got to be insane to get to that point where you're really worried about whether or not you're going to die because of this drug that you used, and yet you can't quit using it. It's got to be insane. It's got to be so frustrating and tormenting. It's got to be so painful. The beat is almost lighthearted, in stark contrast to what he's talking about. Very interesting. Who produced this? Let me see. The Alchemist. Yeah, that's it makes some sense. This beat sounds great. It's definitely not as experimental as some of the other tracks as well. Like that little playful little melody is just has nothing to do with what he's talking about. It does nothing. It kind of clashes almost, but it works for him. It works because it's Danny Brown and he's insane. Next track is Pneumonia. It sounds like Schoolboy Q is on here as well. This is filthy. That fill is insane. I just wish that after that really crazy energetic fill, we actually got some harder hitting drums, especially for the hook. It kind of feels weird, but then again, it is this project, but it kind of feels weird to have that build up and then just no release. It just goes right back into a very smooth, made 30 bands in 30 minutes, and there's no real energy in the drums. It builds up the tension and never gives us that release. I just wish that the beat actually dropped at some point, during the hook. The drums that came in while he was spitting his verses, the very loud, staticky almost snares and stuff like that were very crazy. And this one, again, talking about, you know, not only living that sex lifestyle, the rampant, you know, sexual lifestyle, but also talking about the drugs as well. It was nice to hear some ad-libs from Schoolboy Q on here. I probably wouldn't have noticed that if I didn't see that it was mentioned on Genius. So shout out to Genius for that, always improving the quality of the videos. Yeah, I just feel like, you know, this track probably could have been executed a little better if we actually got some more energetic drums during the hook. That's really the only thing that I have, the only issue I have with it. Next track is Dance in the Water. I find that track annoying. It feels very repetitive. Yeah, I think that's what it is. It just feels very repetitive. You know, his flow is the same for 3 verses. The track is 2 minutes and 40 seconds long. It feels like it's 4 minutes long, you know. It just gets very repetitive very quickly. Next track is From the Ground.
Having dreams of a Cadillac, dog, I had to bounce back, lock a nigga up, why they do me like that? Anyway, now I see better days, missing me, second hour, living on borrowed time.
This hook is very sweet.
So I don't count bars, y'all, be count sheet, no cheat sheet, get it out the mirror, get it how you live. Them too, a lot locked up, wishing they was like you, got a letter from my nigga saying he be out June.
So this one is more of a reflective track, you know, reminiscing on how far he's come, how he made it out of that lifestyle that he used to live, and how he had to build his career up from the ground, you know, and literally coming from the ground up, making it out of the hood. Having to be taken care of by his mother when he first got out of prison, and now he's able to take care of her, and things like that. You know, it's a very sweet track. He takes a very different approach to it vocally. It definitely seems more like a softer tone, you know, like the production isn't as experimental, the hook is sung beautifully. You know, it's a very sweet track as opposed to the chaos of the lifestyle that he was living before. Next track is When It Rained.
Hit it from the back, DJ top, bass let me bang. Boots every day, we run that track. Put that bang down, her come, pick up the trust, way down, down box. Living every day like it's the end. Just waking up, my life got said. That flower gon' brown, ain't no change, then how we gon' change? No umbrella, we stuck in the rain. Dark gonna take it all of yo, what we do? You ain't heard it like this before. They don't do it like this no more. They get on that, they get on that, pop on the block. Oh, you ain't know that. When it rain, when it pour.
So here he talks about some of the violence that goes on in his city. Talks about some of the stuff that goes down in Detroit, some of the gang violence, some of the police brutality, you know, the fact that the county jail is always full. Talks about the crime rate, you know, in the city, things like that, over a very dark beat that is almost like, it's almost got like an EDM vibe, the 4 on the floor, you know, drum pattern during the hook. It's very fast paced. It's got people. It's going to get people moving. You know, it's going to get people like moshing. It's very dark though. It's like it's got an EDM similar style, but it's so much darker and so much more gritty. You know, it's crazy. Very interesting production. Very dark lyrics. You know, talking about the violence. Like I said, we're moving on today. Oh, today. The next track is called Today.
Watch what they say. Watch what they do. When I hook comes rain and blood after that thunder, mama crying, children wonder, but this is the life that we all succumb to. Make it, cause you don't wanna end up happening to you. So everywhere you go, gotta get that too. Cause you don't wanna end up happening to.
That was harsh.
I say you never know when your time to go. I say you never know when your time to go. So damn right, I tell you what. Cause goons on attack, then that's a fact. You don't wanna like that. Nigga take broad daylight, nigga do it right like. Then behind cars when you're heading to spray. You don't wanna beat this.
So again, this one seems to be talking about gang violence and mass incarceration in the United States. This one seems to be talking about people who are snitching. This one, you know, just all these different themes of gang-related lifestyles in inner cities. He does this over it's got a relatively simple beat compared to some of the other songs on this project, but it's very laid back. It's very dark. It's very low. You know, there's a lot of low end to it. There isn't too many high pitched things going on, except for that cymbal that comes on at the end of the first verse, which is really harsh. You know, that's another track. It's similar to the last one in subject matter and content. The next track is Get High.
Things come true, sticky icky nuts, real furry butts, that smell, or no get wet, a fortress, scorching, fine toes on porches, torching up the smoke until it's all gone. Now I'ma bite your bitch, go Tommy Dorsey on my trombone.
Alright, so the battery pack on the camera just died. I'm about to finish this video out on my phone. I'm not certain about the quality of the audio. It's most likely going to be very different, so I'm sorry about that. I'll deal with all that later. I don't know. Hold on, let me lower you guys a little bit, actually. We were about halfway through the track Get High. We've only got one song left after this, so I'm about to just finish this out on my phone and not wait for the battery pack to charge up. So sorry about that. The battery pack has been deteriorating and working for less and less time, you know, but I've got to get a new one. Until then, we're just going to make do with what we got. So thankfully, I still have my phone, and let's get it. So before the battery pack died, I said that the vocals were really cool. Yeah, so it's a really smooth track. It's about getting high. It's about smoking marijuana. It's purposefully made that way so that people can relax to it, lay back, and actually smoke to the track. You know, it's smooth. It's definitely a hard left from some of the other tracks that we've gotten on this project. It's definitely less experimental, more traditionally mainstream. It's got really nice vocals in the background. It's got some really cool wavy guitars. So yeah, you know, it's a nice track. The last track is Hell For It.
Gotta figure this shit out. Used to catch that bus at 12 to chase the hustle for some product in the kitchen with my uncle. Got me mistaken. Muslims allow me bake. Always on the defense, always no offense. Chase a raven, I was out there hustling, scraping up and safe. Chase the catch at 12. I'm in pain, wanna cry right now, so I'm wishing that it rained, cause I'm knowing I'm the best. They compare it, got I'm a kid from
So for the last track, Hell For It, basically just talking about the struggles that he had to go through in order to come up and to get to this position where he's at now. And now that he's here, he's going to give people hell. It's again, a track that displays how hungry he is for more recognition, you know, for people to really value how hard he works, things like that. It's a very nice track to close out this project. And let's talk about this project now, man. So, Atrocity exhibition by Danny Brown. Definitely a trip. Definitely just as weird, if not weirder, than I was expecting, than you guys had prepared me for. Really like how he managed to portray the chaotic feeling of being trapped in that rut, that addiction to alcohol and to drugs and to partying and to not feeling like you're able to get out and feeling like everything is just a mess around you. It's very creative and executed very well artistically. You know, when you look at the lyricism and you look at the production, that is the image that you get, just that insanity, that feeling of despair and hopelessness. It's very well executed, you know, in that sense. It's not necessarily the most replayable music for me. You know, it's not very catchy. It's not very melodic. And that's not to say that I only like melodic, catchy, repetitive music. That's just to say that this particularly was very attention-grabbing in terms of how experimental it was and how nice artistically it was, but just not as gripping sonically as some of the other music that I normally listen to. You know, like I said, this doesn't really feel like music. This almost feels like a movie. It's very heavy. It features very heavy imagery. You can witness all of this happening as he describes it. It's definitely like an experience. It's not just listening to a song. I don't feel like many of these tracks would sound as good outside the context of the project as a whole. I definitely think that if you're going to listen to this, you should listen to the entire thing. It needs to be experienced as a whole. It's very, very nice in terms of its art and in terms of its execution, the production, you know, the mixing. All of it sounds very intentional. You know, all that execution is pretty much flawless. You really can't fault it. It's great in that aspect. It really portrays the picture that it wants to, and that's not something that everybody has the ability to do, to convey the image that they want to. So Danny Brown, props to you for that, for sure. I really enjoyed how hectic this was, how chaotic this was, and thank you all so much for recommending this to me innumerous times. I'm very happy that I finally sat down and gave it a listen. Like I said, I'm sorry about the battery pack and having to switch to my phone. I know the audio on this is very different. Let me know what you prefer, actually. I don't know whether you prefer this audio or the audio from the actual camera. And yeah, thank you all so much. Let me know what you think in the comments section. I am going to go now and sit in front of a fan because it is brutally hot. And I love you all. Thank you all so much for the support. Like I said, support the Patreon, help the channel out, man. Subscribe to the channel, follow my social media. I'll see you all in another video very soon. Until then, stay safe, guys. Peace out.